Chapter 17. Spring, 1875. Tobias roared, "They done it again!" He kicked the stump of an orange tree and said, "Cussed cows! They're stupid critters!" He was inside a 3-acre plot, surrounded by a split-rail fence. A half-dozen cows were standing in a group, swishing their tails and looking at him. Rows of small orange trees had been eaten to the ground and looked like dead sticks protruding from the sandy soil. Tobias jerked one tree from the ground and threw it at the cows, causing them to wheel quickly and trot off to the far side of the fence. They turned, faced him again, and shook their horns menacingly. "Cuss you!" he shouted as he left the plot and walked hurriedly back into the hammock. The house was 3 rooms larger now, one a kitchen built especially for the stove, another a bedroom for Zek, and a storeroom containing 2 steamer trunks. The palmetto thatch was replaced with cypress shingles, and there was a porch across the front of the house. A cabin had been built for Frog, and Bonzo and Skillet had added an additional room to his cabin. There was also a barn down by the garden area. Tobias stomped into the house and said, "The cows is et my orange trees again. That's the 3rd time I've planted them, and them stupid critters has done it every time." Emma continued chopping onions as she said, "Why don't you keep the cows away from them?" "Man who sells them to me says if I don't put cows in there to do the fertilizing, the trees won't grow, and that makes sense." "Then buy taller trees." "Taller trees?" Tobias repeated. "How come I didn't think of that? If the trees is taller than the cows, then the cows can't eat 'em. That's what I'll do. Buy taller trees. I'll send Skillet for another wagon load." Emma smiled as Tobias walked out briskly. Tobias had made 4 more drives into Punta Rasa, each one larger than the one before. He now had regular buying points along the trail, and his last herd numbered over 3,000. Predators still stalked them, and many nights they kept fires burning to turn away wolves, but there had been no major disasters. The old army horse died and was replaced by a tall black mare, and Tobias also purchased a buckboard and another horse to pull it. He bought 2 oxen, which were used to pull the supply wagon during trail drives and when they followed grazing herds in summer months. Other than this and the purchase of orange trees, the money from the sales of cows had been stockpiled, and now one steamer trunk was filled with sacks of gold doubloons, and another started. Frog and Bonzo were the only ones interested in the coins as something to spend, and for 2 weeks after each drive they disappeared. To the others, the doubloons were just something to pile into a trunk and exchange for supplies when needed. The McIvy clan's lifestyle changed none at all. Zek had grown along with the homestead and was now as tall as his father and 10 pounds heavier. But unlike Tobias, his hair turned a sandy brown. The most visible change in Tobias was the white specks that invaded his black beard. Tobias found Skillet down at the barn mending a harness strap. He said straight away, "I want you to take the wagon and get me some more orange trees. Same place as last, out west of Fort Pierce." Skillet noticed the agitation in Tobias' voice and manner. He said, "Them cows done eat your trees again, ain't they?" Tobias ignored the question. "This time, get taller trees. I don't want nothing less than 6 feet. Stand by each of them, and if one's shorter than you, don't buy it. Get all you can cram on that wagon. Emma will give you the money." "All right, Mr. Tobias. I'll start right away. But would it be okay if I stay for a day or 2? I got a chore to do while I'm down there." "What kind of chore?" Tobias asked, still agitated. "You've been saying now for over 5 years you got a chore to do every time you leave the hammock. You ain't done it yet. You got something you want to do, why don't you just go and do it instead of just talking about it?" "It ain't never worked out yet," Skillet replied. "Maybe this time it will." "Must be some chore," Tobias muttered. "Take what time you have to do. But don't be gone too long. Soon as they get in with this last bunch of cows, we got to move the herd to grazing ground. Ain't enough grass left here for a billy goat to eat." "Sure ain't," Skillet agreed. "We don't get some rain soon, the whole place gonna look like frost hit it. I ain't never seen it be this dry for so long this time of year." Lek popped the whip just over the cow's head, turning it sharp right and into the pen. He leaped from the saddle and closed the gate. Then he called for the dogs to leave the cows and come to him. Frog wheeled his horse and said, "That's the last of them, bunch. We can start back tomorrow." The corral held 60 cows. They had spent idle winter months building small pens 10 miles apart along the areas of the spring roundup, using them to brand and cut the cattle as they caught them, and also contained them at night or while they hunted others. Zek rode over to a nearby cypress stand and tied Ishmael. Then he gave each dog a strip of dry beef. It was late afternoon, and long flights of herons and egrets drifted eastward. The sky in the west was cloudless and streaked with red and orange, marking the time when day creatures retreated and night dwellers emerged. Zek watched with amusement as a mother raccoon ambled by with her brood, chatting a loud protest of his presence. Frog and Bonzo rode to the stand and dismounted. Frog stretched and groaned, and then he said, "Ain't nothing but a fool makes his living rubbing his butt against a saddle all day. Sometimes mine feels like it's busted. What you got left in the way of grub?" Zek said, "Nothing. Nothing but a couple strips of dried beef and a few biscuits, and they're as hard as hickory nuts." "Don't even have that," Bonzo said. "Just one scrap of meat that looks like it ought to be buried." "You want me to kill a rabbit?" Zek asked. "If you do, I'd best see to it now before it gets too dark." "What I miss most out here is Miss Emma's victuals," Frog said. "I ain't got nothing left. We ought to have brought more supplies or turned back 2 days ago. We could have come back and got them cows some other time." "Papa said we're not coming back after this," Zek said. "We're headed out for grazing. And besides that, none of these cows is marked yet. You and Bonzo will get credit for all of them." "Maybe so," Frog said, "but that don't help my belly none. I'd as soon have a big bowl of Miss Emma's hot stew just now as the $60 over yonder in that pen." Frog scratched his head and thought, and then said, "I've got a good idea. We couldn't be over an hour's ride from Fort Drum, maybe less. We could go over there and get some fresh grub and be back here not long after dark." "What about the cows?" Zek asked. "We can't go off and leave them unguarded." "They ain't going nowhere inside that pen, and I ain't seen a wolf sign in 3 days. We could leave the dogs tied to the fence to watch after them." "That'd be like using nip and tuck for fish bait," Zek said, shaking his head in disagreement. "Some bears or other varmints come in here, and dogs wouldn't have a chance tied to a rail. We'd have to take them with us." "Ain't nothing going to happen to the cows," Frog insisted. "We can build a fire on both sides of the corral. That would keep off anything that comes around till we get back." You two go on, and I'll stay," Zek said. "I'm not all that hungry anyway. I can make do on what I got." "We ain't about to leave you out here by yourself. If something happened while you were gone, your old papa would raise more hell than you've ever seen. Either you go or nobody goes." "You think I can't handle things by myself?" Zek asked angrily. "It ain't that, and you know it. There's no use in getting riled up. Your papa wouldn't want nobody left alone at night on the prairie. Not you, or me, or Bonzo. We gonna go or not? If we ain't, then you might as well shoot us one of them old rabbits." "Well, if your belly is in that bad of a shape, I guess I'll go," Zek said reluctantly. "But I don't like it. I've seen what can happen to a cow at night, and you have too. Ain't nothing gonna happen, Frog repeated. As soon as the fires were glowing, they rode eastward, cantering the horses as the dogs followed, moving at a steady pace across the palmetto prairie. The sunset reflected light ahead of them, a dim glow rapidly fading into the tops of cabbage palms, and cypress stands stood out like darkened castles, looming upward from the flat land. Just as the last sunbeam died, they spotted a bonfire a mile to the north. Trading posts in the wilderness often put out such beacons at night, guiding unfamiliar travelers to a spot they could never find in darkness. The horses panted slightly when the trio rode in and stopped in front of the store. Soft coal oil light spilled out from the two front windows and the open door, and several men sat on the building's porch, chewing and spitting silently. Zek followed Frog and Bonzo inside, still doubtful about the journey and wishing he had remained behind. He wanted them to make their purchases quickly and head back to the corral. Frog said to a man wearing a white apron, "You got cheese?" "Enough to put up a horse. How much you wantin'?" 3 pounds and 6 cans of beans. You got bread and 10 sausage?" "My wife bakes bread every day. We got sausages." 3 each. The man put the order into a brown sack and said, "Bring anything else?" "Them men out in front just chewing their cuz like cows, or is that tobacco?" Frog asked. "Tobacco." "Then throw in a twist." "That'll be $2.50, the man said, putting into the sack a link of twisted tobacco that looked like smoked sausage. He took the money and made change from a small wooden box. "You men just passing through?" "No," Frog responded. "We got some cows penned up on the prairie west of here. We run out of grub." "If we ain't in a hurry, there's going to be a hoedown here soon as the folks be coming out of the woods. You're welcome to stay." Frog's face brightened. "You hear that, fellas? They're having a frolic here in a little while. Y'all want to stay?" "I do," Bonzo said quickly. What's a frolic?" Zek asked, annoyed that something might change their plans to leave immediately. "Fiddles and dancing," Frog responded. "Ain't you ever been to one?" "If I had, I wouldn't ask what it is. We need to go. We ain't got time for such stuff. Cows ain't everything, Zek. Just take it easy. We'll stay for a short spell and leave. You might enjoy it if you try." They went outside, sat at the edge of the porch, and started eating. People drifted in out of the darkness, on horses and in ox-drawn wagons, and soon a milling crowd filled the clearing. Several men threw more logs on the fire, bringing the front of the store into focus. Then 3 men with fiddles mounted the porch and played briskly. Another shouted a cadence as men grabbed women, starting the first round of a square dance. Zek watched sullenly as Frog and Bonzo joined the line of dancers, kicking their boots into the soft dirt, swaying linked arms, then swinging down the line as they changed partners again and again. Zek was unaware of the girl's presence until he looked up, and he wondered how long she'd been standing there. She had flaming red hair that flowed past her shoulders, pale green eyes, and white skin not burned brown by the prairie sun. A blue cotton dress came down to her shoes, and she wore a matching ribbon around her slim waist. She said, "It's better on a wooden floor where you can hear the shoes tapping. The men are going to build a meeting hall soon so we can have the frolics inside. You look like you're not enjoying it. Don't you feel good?" Well, I Zek stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. "I've never seen you here before. My daddy owns the store, and I usually know everybody who comes into the frolic. My name's Glenda Turner. What's yours?" "Zek," he managed to say. "Zek McIvy. We came in for food. We got cows penned out there in the prairie." "You live nearby?" Up on the Kissimmee, about a day's ride from here. We're in the cattle business, and we're finishing up the spring roundup." She waited for him to ask, and when he remained silent, she said, You want to dance the next one with me?" Zek felt like he had swallowed a pine burr that lodged in his throat. He forced out the words, "I don't know how. I've never been to a frolic before." "Oh, that's too bad. Would you like some punch? I helped my mother make it, and I know it's good. The bowl's on the table at the end of the porch." That would be fine." Zek was still sitting, and when he got up to follow her, she came only to the top of his shoulder. When they reached the table, she filled a cup with red liquid and handed it to him. He downed it in one gulp and said, "That's real good. Never tasted nothing like that." "It's sugar that makes it sweet, but it's better if you just sip." His face turned crimson as he said, "I'm sorry I drank it so fast. Next time I won't." "Here, let me get you another. How old are you?" she asked for the second time with no answer. He shook his head, feeling as if he had jumped a 10-rail fence. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you at first. I'm 17, going on 18. "I'm 14, but my mother says I look older. Do you think I look older than 14? I don't know. I've never been around girls, only my mama. But you look fine to me." "Well, thank you. I've never been around boys very much either. There's not many young people in Fort Drum." The music stopped between dances, and Zek noticed Frog and Bonzo out by a wagon with several sweating men drinking from gallon jugs. He started to go over to them and insist they leave, but said instead, "You want to see my dogs? They look like wolves. They're on the other side of the store." "Well, I'd like to. I've never seen a wolf or a dog that looked like one." They walked past the crowd of people and found the dogs sitting in the shadows, waiting patiently as Zek told them to do. He said, This one is Nip, and that one's Tuck. They're the best cow dogs that's ever been." "Aren't you afraid of them?" she asked. "I mean, they're so big." "Oh, they's good dogs. They won't hurt you. Touch one." She put her hand on Nip's head, causing his tail to wag vigorously. "See? I told you. He likes you. You want to see my horse, too? His name is Ishmael, and he's a marsh tacky. The Seminoles gave him to us." They went to the rail where Ishmael was tied. Zek said, "He's little, but he runs like the wind. I won a race with him in Punta Rassa. Outran a big Tennessee bay twice his size." Then, on an impulse, he said, "You want to ride? We'll just go a short piece and come back." "If you'll help me in the saddle, I can't get up there in this long dress." When they came back to the store and the people and the screaming fiddle, he was jolted back to reality. He jumped from the horse, lifted her down, and said, I got to find Frog and Bonzo and go now. There's bears and wolves out in that prairie, and the cows might be in danger. I didn't mean to take you so far." "Oh, I enjoyed it," she said. "Will you be coming back soon?" "I don't know. We're taking the cows grazing as soon as we get back to the hammock. After that, we'll go to Punta Rassa and sell them. But if I don't come back this summer, I will in the fall." "If you do, I'll teach you to dance. Will you promise me you'll try?" "I promise. And I'll be back as soon as I can." Frog and Bonzo were still at the wagon, and Glenda watched as Zek turned quickly and walked straight to them. He said, "We best go. We've been here long enough. We've got to go see the cows." They mounted and rode westward, putting the horses into a canter again, crossing a plain now flooded with soft moonlight. It seemed to Zek that the cabbage palms and palmetto had turned to lilacs. The scent clung to him and the saddle coming from everywhere, making the ride last only moments before they approached the corral. Even before they reached the pen, Zek sensed something was wrong. He put Ishmael into a fast gallop. He stopped just short of the rails and stared disbelieving into an empty corral. Frog rode up beside him and said, "Now, how'd they do that? I checked that gate myself. It was shut tight. They must have pushed it open and took off." "I told you. We shouldn't have gone off and left them alone, Zek said, guilt in his voice. I told you! We should have stayed here and watched after them. They're somewhere close by, Frog said assuringly. Cows don't run at night unless they're afraid. If something had been after them, they'd have busted down this fence, not just opened the gate and walked out. There's not even a single rail pushed sideways. We'll find them in the morning. I hope so, Zek said doubtfully. I've never lost a bunch of cows like this for no reason at all. We best start looking for them at first sunup. If we don't find them, I'll have a hard time explaining it to Papa. Frog looked down from his horse and said, It's for sure nothing spooked them. The tracks is too close together for them to be running. They walked away from here, calm as raccoons. We must not have locked the gate good, Zek said. Maybe so, but I could have sworn it was shut tight. I checked it right before we left. I'll put Nip and Tuck on the trail. They can sniff them out a lot quicker than we can follow the tracks. Zek dismounted and whistled for the dogs. When they came to him, he pushed their noses in the ground and said, Go! Find them! Go! They didn't bolt forward instantly and race away, and instead they moved slowly and carefully at first, sniffing constantly, going off to the right and to the left to determine if any cow had wandered off alone. The trail led south for 4 miles, and then it turned west into an area of dense palmetto. Frog signaled for Zek and Bonzo to stop and then said to them, You think this is really worth it, Zek? Them cows scatters into this palmetto thicket. We'll have to pot them out one at a time. We can round up a new bunch of cows quicker than this. Zek knew what Frog said was true, but he was thinking of Tobias and the trust he placed in him to handle the roundup. He said, Let's just go a bit further. The tracks are still all together. If we don't find them soon, we'll turn back and head for the hammock. They followed the tracks for a half-mile more, going deeper into thick scrub. When they came to a trail that ran straight into a narrow, dry slough bordered on both sides by Spanish bayonet and then thick clumps of palmetto. Zek was just about to call the dogs and turn back when it came. A shattering boom, ear-splitting, coming from somewhere on the right just ahead of them. Tuck's head flew off and rolled forward, blood gushing from the stump and spilling out into a flood. Rifle bullets peppered the ground around Nip. He barked and braked quickly, tumbling over and over. Then he scrambled to his feet and retreated, running for the nearest cover. Then he fell again. Ishmael jumped sideways instinctively, somehow knowing what he must do, even before Zek realized what was happening. He staggered and then righted himself, almost throwing Zek from the saddle. Then he bolted into a clump of palmetto. Zek left the saddle and fell to the ground, stunned momentarily, before he heard someone close by shouting, Bushwhackers! Bushwhackers! Stay hid! Stay hid! The popping sounds continued as Zek lay still. A limb above him shattered, sending a fine spray of palmetto fiber into his eyes. He brushed it away and pushed himself into a sitting position. Then, for the first time, he realized what he had seen. Tuck's head departing its body. The instantly lifeless form tumbling over and over through his own blood. Then Nip falling also, scrambling and falling again, not knowing if he had escaped death or not. Fear gripped Zek, and then it turned into instant rage, uncontrollable rage. He snapped a frond from the palmetto and beat the ground with it, shouting, No good, thieves! The firing stopped as suddenly as it began. The voice of Frog came again. Stay put! Don't come out yet! Zek ignored the warning. He jumped to his feet and staggered forward blindly, trying to see through tears that fogged his eyes. He walked into the open slough and to the body. He fell to his knees and touched the shaggy fur. Tuck's eyes were open, staring, seemingly puzzled as to what happened to him so swiftly. Zek reached out grabbed the head and placed it back to the body. Shouting came again. "Zach, get out of there! They might not be gone yet!" He went to the sound and located Frog's horse. Then he ripped the pistol from the saddlebag and started running, screaming again, "No good thieves!" Frog tackled him from behind and struggled to hold him, the two of them tumbling over and over like wildcats fighting. The pistol went off, spewing smoke into their eyes. Then Frog shouted, "Don't be a fool, Zach! Anybody who'd do this for some scrawny yellowhammers would as soon shoot you as a buzzard. Let go of the gun!" Zach loosened his grip and lay still. He looked up, rubbing his eyes. Seeing that it was Frog on top of him, he said, "What about Nip? Did they kill him too?" "I don't know. Last time I seen him, he was making for the bushes over to the left of us. Let's go see." The two of them got up, crossed the slough, and entered the palmetto. They found Nip 20 feet inside the brush. He was lying on his side, whimpering, trying to lift his head, but unable to do so. When he saw Zach, he wagged his tail feebly. Zach dropped down and touched him. "He's shot, but I can make him well. We'll take him back to the hammock." "No, Zach. His guts is blown apart. He's hurting real bad. You'll have to finish him." Zach looked at the bloodied stomach, the gaping hole, realizing what must be done. "I can't do it, Frog. You'll have to." Then he walked away quickly. He cringed when he heard the pistol fired, tears forming again in his eyes. Bonzo was standing by his horse, his left arm hanging limp and blood-stained. When Zach saw this, he went to him and said, "Are you hit bad, Bonzo?" "No, I ain't nothing but a flesh wound. Bullet went clear through. I'll be okay as soon as I can tie a cloth to it. The thief who cracked down on me ain't too good a shot." Frog came from the palmetto and joined them. "Let's get out of here before them crazy fools decide to come back," he said. "Not before I bury Nip and Tuck," Zach said. "I ain't going to leave them out here for buzzard bait." "Oh, come on, Zach. How you going to bury them dogs without a shovel?" "With my hands, if I have to. I'll not leave until it's done." "I'll help then," Frog said, knowing he could not get Zach away otherwise. "I'll get some sticks to dig with." They scraped a hole in the ground, using both hands and hickory, and put the dogs in a common grave. Zach covered them by himself, patting the dirt firmly, hoping some panther or wolf would not come along, find them, and dig them up. He said, "I ain't never been able to read the book. If I could, I'd say words, but I don't know how. I hope the Lord blesses them." As they mounted the horses to leave, Zach said, "I ain't never going nowhere again without a gun. If I ever find them thieves who done this, I blow their heads slam off, just as they done to Tuck." "We don't know even who it was," Frog said, "and chances are we'll never know. They're varmints, just like them everywhere." "I'll know. If I ever come on them, I'll know. Just like Ishmael knowed the wolves were coming, someday I'll find them." Zach looked back briefly at the grave, and then put Ishmael into a fast trot. "Don't try to blame yourself all this on yourself, Zach," Tobias said. "It ain't your fault. And it don't matter none about all the cows. We got plenty more. I'm just glad all of you got out of this alive." "But I know it's my fault, Papa," Zach insisted. "I killed Nip and Tuck just as sure as if I pulled the trigger myself, and if I hadn't gone to that store and stayed for the frolic, none of this would have happened. They'd be alive." "Them men was back shooters, Zach," Tobias said harshly. "Don't you understand that? Staying for the frolic might have saved your life." "Maybe so, but I won't leave a herd unguarded again, and when we get to Punta Rasa, You got to get me a gun. I'll do it. You ought to carry one anyway, but don't go around shooting every man you think might have killed the dogs. Frog said, Mr. McAfee, what kind of gun could blow a dog's head slam off like that done, Tux? I ain't never seen something like that before. In all my lifetime, I ain't never seen but one that could do it. Stole from me when we lived in the scrub. It's a 10-gauge breech loader with two 40-inch barrels. It's made by a gunsmith just for my daddy, and it's the only thing he left me besides grief. There may be others like it, but I ain't seen one. It has my mark on the stock. Some of them varmints who bushwhacked you could be the same ones who burned my house. I'm glad they turned a rifle on Bonzo's instead of that thing, Frog said. They had, he'd be scattered all over the prairie. I killed a bear with it once, Zek said, and it like to have broke my shoulder. If I ever see that old gun again, I'll know, even without the mark. Frog said, I've been trying to figure out what's missing around here. Where's Skillet? I sent him out after some orange trees 5 days ago, and he ain't come back yet. I done dug all the holes while he's been gone. Maybe he end up in Georgia instead of Fort Pierce. I don't think nobody'd bushwhack a wagon full of orange trees. Bonzo sat on the stoop while Emma put a fresh dressing on the wound. When she finished, she said, You'll be as good as new in a couple days. Yawn now. Join that man talk while I fix supper. Thanks, Miss Emma, Bonzo said. I appreciate you doing this for me. You're welcome. And I'll see to your stomach next. It's probably in worse shape than your arm. Tobias said, Frog, you and Bonzo take those horses down to the barn. They probably need some rest after you run them like you did. I'll go and help, Zek said. No, you stay here. I want to talk to you. Zek and Tobias sat on the edge of the stoop while the horses were led away. Tobias said, Son, I know you're hurting now. Hurting real bad. I felt the pain myself, and I know how it is. But don't grieve too long for Nip and Tut. Let it go. What you just seen and been through will come again and again. This whole wilderness is built on such as that, and it's going to get worse before it gets better, if it ever does. You've got to learn to take the bad as well as the good, no matter what comes along. Don't go on hurting too long. Papa, I don't think I'll ever forget seeing what I've seen. Not ever. Yeah, you will. Ain't no pain that don't fade away. We'll get other dogs, and you'll like them too, and time will come when they take the place of Nip and Tuck. The new dogs will be the ones close to you, and the ones you remember, not the old ones. That's the way it is. Something you like, lose, be replaced, and it'll go on and on, over and over again. Would you forget Mama if she left us? Tobias did not expect such a response. He said, that's different. I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about critters. There's men who can replace a woman, and a year later hardly remember her name and anything about her. Only the one with them at that time is who matters. But no, Zach, I would not forget your mama, or replace her either. That's what I thought you'd say, and I feel the same about Nip and Tuck. I don't think I'll ever want any more dogs. Tobias put his arm on Zek's shoulder. We don't talk much like this, and maybe we ought to do it more often. I guess we've both been too busy chasing cows. What I've said, I've said badly. I ain't good with words, and you know that. All I'm trying to tell you, son, is to be strong. Don't let nothing get you down. Don't be afraid or ashamed to love or to grieve when the thing you love is gone. Just don't let it throw you, no matter how much it hurts. If you make it in this wilderness, you got to be strong. You understand me? Yes, Papa. I understand. And I'm sorry I cried for the dogs. Don't be. No. Don't ever be sorry for something like that. Ain't nothing wrong with a man crying. I done it for a week when my mama died. But when you get done with it, start over again. And don't ever look back. Now go on down to the barn and see Ishmael. He probably won't let Frog or Bonzo touch him. I'll see to him, Papa. I'll feed him and water him and brush him down too. I ran him pretty hard coming back to the hammock. Tobias watched him run away, seeing him as a boy again, but knowing that such a time was gone forever. He said, "You'll see to it proper, Zach. You always have." After supper, Tobias went to the barn to pen the oxen for the night, leaving Emma and Zek alone in the house. Zek was at the table, still brooding about the dogs in spite of what his father had said. Emma sat beside him, wanting to distract him from such thoughts. She said, "Did you have a good time at the frolic?" "I guess. But I didn't dance. I don't know how." "Did you meet someone?" "Yes, ma'am." "But was she pretty?" "Oh, the prettiest thing I ever seen," Zach responded, knowing he could talk to his mother more frankly about something like this than he could his father. "She had hair as red as the sunset, and she smelled like flowers." I smelled like flowers once, but not anymore." "Oh, you smell just fine, Mama," he said, touching her hand, "and you always have." "Not like flowers anymore. That's for young girls. Did you like her?" "She rode with me on Ishmael. Her name is Glenda Turner. Her daddy owns the store at Fort Drum." "But did you like her?" she asked again. I'd never been that close to a girl before. I guess I did. She made me dizzy, like I was spinning round and round. She said if I come back, she'll teach me to dance." Emma put her hand on his. "Zach, if you like her, don't stay away too long. Flowers has a way of being plucked by someone, and there's not many nice ones out there in the wilderness. They don't stay in bloom forever. Maybe I can go back there after the drive. If I can find the time, I'll go." "You best make the time. Cows won't ever smell good like flowers. Someday you'll know that." Zach remembered Frog saying to him, "Cows ain't everything," he said. "Thanks, Mama. I won't forget what you've told me. I'll go back to Fort Drum first chance I get." Everyone in the house at noon the next day, just finishing dinner, when the wagon creaked into the clearing. It looked like a mobile grove with orange trees crammed into every inch of available space. Skillet stopped just beside the stoop and shouted, "Eyes back! Everybody eyes back! Come see what I got." Tobias expected only trees, and then he was surprised, like everyone else, at the sight of a girl on the wagon seat, perched there like a frigid owl, her eyes wide and blinking. Skillet said, "This here's Pearly May. Preacher done married us, proper and legal." His face was split by a grin with only teeth showing. "So that's what your chore's been?" Tobias exclaimed, still staring. "If you wanted a wife, Skillet, why didn't you just say so?" "I's over 40 years now, Mr. Tobias. If I don't start me a family now, I'll soon be too old to even try. Pearly May be a big help to Mrs. Emma. You know how to cook, wash, sew, do most everything. You don't mind I brought her here, do you? She won't be bothering nobody." "Of course I don't mind," Tobias responded. "You most welcome, Pearly May." Frog started jumping up and down, shouting, "Yee-haw! Yee-haw! Old Skillet done got him a woman! Woo! There's gonna be babies all over the hammock, thick as June bugs." "Shut your mouth, Frog," Skillet said, "before I pick you up and sling you into Buzzard's nest where you belong. You scared Pearly May. Should think you crazy." "He is," Tobias said. "Don't pay him no mind, Pearly May. He's just jealous. Wouldn't nothing made up with Frog, not even a wolf." "One thing's for sure," Frog said. "Ain't no woman gonna get the chance. I'd as soon be a buzzard nest and tied down to some woman's apron strings." "You men hush up now," Emma exclaimed, chattering on like a bunch of jaybirds drunk on china berries. Then she turned to the girl. "You got a fine man, Pearly May, real fine. Come on down now. Let's take a look at you." The girl climbed down reluctantly, looking as if she might yet bolt and run. She was about 20, 2 feet shorter than Skillet and 15 pounds overweight for her size. Her head was wrapped in a red bandana, and a feed sack dress came down to the top of an oversized pair of brogan shoes. She managed a feeble smile, and then she said, "I was glad to meet you, Miss Emma. Skillet done told me all about you and Mr. McCavey and Zach and everybody else, too. I was glad to be here." Emma put her arm around the still frightened girl and said, "We're glad to have you in the family, Pearlie Mae, real glad. Let's me and you go in the kitchen and have some woman talk and leave these men to themselves. I'll fix us a fresh pot of coffee." Pearlie Mae seemed to relax as she followed Emma into the house. Skillet said, "Where's the dogs? I wanted to show them Pearlie Mae right off so they'd be friendly with her. I don't want her coming on them sudden like and think they's wolves." Tobias glanced at Zach, and then he said, "We'll talk about that later, Skillet. Dogs ain't here just now. We need to set out them trees. Ain't good for them to be out of the ground too long, and I got all the holes dug up." Zach spoke up and said, "Well, while you're out doing that, couldn't me and Ishmael go down to the woods, Papa?" "Sure, go on. We don't need you with the planting." As Zach walked toward the barn, Skillet said, "Zach don't look too good, Mr. Tobias. He been sick?" "I tell you about it while we plant the trees."